thank you to Jessica and to Ashley for that. We'd like to start appropriately with prayer, and I welcome Pastor Ed Wheeler of the Valley Bible Church of Middlebury, Vermont. Welcome, Pastor.
Let's pray. Heavenly Father, we thank you for being the author of life. How we do praise you and thank you. We love you, Lord, for giving us the gift of life. We pray that today you would strengthen our minds, strengthen our hearts, strengthen our hands, strengthen our wills, give us courage, give us wisdom, give us insight, give us all the things we need to do to serve you and to serve this precious gift of life. We pray in the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit. Amen.
Thank you, Pastor. A couple of opening remarks before we start with the commemoration of why we're here. Please take a moment to silence your cell phones. I just did that a few minutes ago. And there are, out this door and to the right of the ramp, there are restrooms and water. So please keep yourself comfortable. And if there is any students here who are collecting community service, whether you're in public school, homeschool, or a Christian or Catholic school, please see me after at the table. I have a community service form for this social justice activity. And now on to the reason why we're here. We are quickly approaching the 47th anniversary of Roe versus Wade. This commemoration of 47 years represents 61 million lives lost. Let's just take a moment in silent prayer and lift up our hearts and minds to God for all this loss. Mother Teresa noted that abortion takes the life of one, but it wounds the life of another. Abortion takes the life of one, but it wounds the life of another. I would add, as a woman, as a fellow human being, the shockwaves go so far beyond that. The shockwaves include men and all of society. This year's theme at the March for Life in Washington, D.C., which takes place next Friday, is pro-life is pro-woman, life empowers. It's so true. Life empowers, and it empowers women, not death. Watch their powerful trailer, you can find it by going to March for Life 2020. It's just a 2-minute trailer with that theme. Pro-life is pro-woman, life empowers. Mirroring that theme, the Walk for Life West Coast and San Francisco's theme this year is, and their mission is together, let's change, and this applies to each and every one of us. Let us change the perceptions of a society that thinks abortion is an answer. Abortion does violence to women and to their children, both physically and emotionally. We deserve better. Each and every one of us deserves better than abortion. So we march. So we rally. Here we are. Because as long as the voiceless are not protected, we cannot not march, right? That's right. This weekend, our theme is also Bring Vermont Back to Life. And we'll get into that more now, because we need that more than ever here in this state to bring Vermont back to life. Amen? This weekend, we also celebrate Dr. Martin Luther King, whose day is on Monday, whose niece, Dr. Elvita King, many of you may know, is active in the pro-life movement with, I believe the organization is Priests for Life. But his very own niece is active in the pro-life movement today. As a matter of fact, she's probably speaking at one of the nationwide rallies. And Dr. Martin Luther King said, "The time is always right to do what is right." I think a key word here is time. We all are so busy in our professions, with our families, with our sports, with our church, everything that takes up our time. We're so busy, and I want to thank each and every one of you for taking the time to stand for life today, because it's our most precious resource. To give us a sense of not feeling so alone in this fight for life, I started looking up at the March for Life. I started looking up what's going on across the country, to give you a few examples of the other huge rallies that are going on to support life. And I was so overwhelmed by the vast number in every corner of our country that's going on that I decided that we would take that picture out front. So I can't even begin to list it, the list is so long. But I decided we could take that picture out front with our arms raised, like in praise, like Victory for Life Vermont, right? I'm gonna send that picture to the rally in Olympia, Washington, and I'm going to send it down to San Diego, down in the Southwest, and then I'm going to send a copy of that picture down to St. Augustine, Florida, where they're also having a rally. But everywhere in between is rallying too. But I wanted to show the furthest countries how united we are across this country for life. So thanks for being part of that image that's going to be shared across the country. We are here because we believe that every life matters. We don't just care about the mom, we don't just care about the baby, we don't just care about the dads, we care about every human life, born and unborn, all the vulnerable. So, as we proceed, without further ado, I'll give you just a snapshot of the flow of the events today. We have a real local focus today. We have two speakers. One is New England based, and then one is our own keynote Vermont speaker. So after our two speakers, we have a couple brief announcements, and then we'll have this new original Vermont-made closing song, and then lunch will be served up here in the cafeteria. That's kind of a snapshot of what today looks like. So now I welcome our guest speaker. Abigail Young, she grew up in Columbus, Ohio, and graduated from Boston College. Through her commitment to community service and religious ministry, she discovered the importance of acknowledging and protecting the inherent value of every human life. Abigail's lifelong passion for defending and protecting the lives of the most vulnerable developed into a deep desire to spread the message of life and combat the culture of death, so present in our world. As an active member and later president of her campus's pro-life group, she worked to raise awareness about the reality of pregnant students on campus and the lack of education about abortion in her greater community. We applaud both of those things. If you're interested in starting or strengthening a pro-life group in the New England area, anywhere in New England, you can contact Abigail at ayoung@studentsforlife.org. That's ayoung@studentsforlife.org. Also, after the remarks today, I'll remain in the House chambers for a few minutes in case any of you want to write down anything that you missed during the talks. So there'll be time for a couple brief questions after Abigail's talk, and then we'll welcome our keynote speaker. So please join me in welcoming Abigail Young, Students for Life.
Saturday. It's a very cold day. This might be the coldest march I've ever been to. As Joanna said, my name is Abigail Young, and I'm the New England Regional Coordinator for Students for Life of America. So who doesn't know who we are? Anyone not know? Okay, cool, that's fine, some hands. So Students for Life is actually the largest pro-life youth organization in the country, and we serve over 1,200 high school and college campuses throughout the nation. If you've ever seen or held one of those black and white signs that say, I'm the pro-life generation, or we are the pro-life generation, that's us. It says studentsforlife.org, very tiny on the bottom. But that's our slogan. It's also on my sweatshirt and almost all of the clothes that we sell. And our sole mission is to abolish abortion, and our main goal is that we believe that this generation is the key to abolishing abortion. Travel throughout the 6 states of New England, educating this generation about the truth of abortion, exposing the deceptive reality of the abortion industry, and promoting life-affirming alternatives for women and children. I actually was asked to be at the Women's March today, so Students for Life goes down to the March for Life a week early to Washington, D.C., and we're a pro-life presence at the Women's March, and I said, I'm not going this year, I'm going to go to Vermont, so you guys why Students for Life, I mean, it's our name, but why we work with students. Why do we work with people who are not even old enough to drive or to vote? Like, how can they, why is this important? And to me, the answer is pretty simple, and there are two parts to it. The first part is that these young generations are the target of the abortion industry. 44% of abortions are performed on women between the ages of 15 and 24. And 79% of abortion facilities are within 5 miles of high school and college campuses. This is not a coincidence. This is intentional. Planned Parenthood and the abortion industry are intentionally targeting these most vulnerable populations. But to me, this generation is so much more than just a target for the abortion industry, an industry that promotes and practices the culture of death. Today's youth are the hope of a future and a generation with the courage and the heart to stand up against the violence of injustice. And this leads me to the second half of my answer. Students are not only our present, but they're our future. Today's young people are tomorrow's teachers, politicians, doctors, lawyers, and parents who will shape the future of society for better or for worse. And at Students for Life, we want it to be for better, for love, and for life. We all know that since the Roe v. Wade and Doe v. Fulton decisions in January of 1973, which legalized abortion through all 9 months of pregnancy, which a lot of people don't know, there have been over 61 million abortions in our country. These lives lost and the lives wounded are victims of society's narrative, and this narrative is mainly driven by Planned Parenthood and the abortion industry. They are the ones who are infiltrating our schools and our communities with the idea that not only is abortion okay, but it's good, it's normal, and it's even empowering. They are the ones who tell us that these precious preborn lives are nothing but a blob of tissue or a clump of cells. That the only solution to an unplanned pregnancy is abortion. And that the only way for a woman to succeed in life is to go against her most inherent feminine nature and end the life of her own child. They hide behind the veil of women's health care while taking the lives of thousands and over 900 little boys and girls every day. That's like, I don't know the latest math because it's over 900, but that's about 36 children per hour. I could go on and on about these statistics, but I'm sure you all know a lot of this. And I know that you know the truth, that at the moment of fertilization, a new human being with unique DNA and a unique life is created. One that can never be repeated or replicated. You know that at 21 days, a child's heart is beating, and by week 20, a child in the womb can feel pain. And that medical advancements are continually improving the point of viability for these children. But some people don't know these things, or they force themselves to ignore the truth. And that is why radical abortion and infanticide bills are being proposed and passed by state after state, including Vermont. So that's the bad news. But I do have good news. The tide is turning. According to an Institute for Pro-Life Advancement poll that was taken last year, 70% of millennials support limits on abortion through specific policies. 48% of millennials prefer their tax dollars go to federally qualified healthcare centers rather than Planned Parenthood. And only 7% of millennials share the abortion without exception and funded by tax dollars position of the Democratic Party platform. 7%. Young people are starting to see through the lies and deception of the abortion industry because they're recognizing that this devastation of abortion has wrought so much on their people, on their families, their friends, and their classmates. And most importantly, now they're doing something about it. Students across the nation and in other countries now as well are joining in this fight one campus at a time to defend the preborn and support women. I see this firsthand on campuses every day. Unfortunately, not too many in Vermont yet, but hopefully that will change soon. Students for Life groups are educating their peers about the harmful reality of abortion. They're providing pregnant and parenting students with resources so they can continue their education while choosing life for their child. They're helping post-abortive women find healing, partnering with local pregnancy resource centers, and so much more. They are the activists that this movement needs to change our culture, to not just make abortion illegal, but to make it unthinkable. So for any students here today, if you have a pro-life group at your school, please let me know. I would love to hear all the incredible life-saving work that you've been doing. And if you don't have a pro-life group at your school, I would love to help you start one. That's literally what my job is to do. So whether you're homeschooled in middle school, high school, college, even if you're a young adult, we serve you too. And we have tons of free resources designed just for your age group. And for the adults here, I haven't forgotten about you either. While Students for Life isn't specifically targeted to your demographic, there are many ways you can become involved with our work. And the easiest way is by encouraging the younger ones in your life to become involved. It may not seem like it all the time, but they do look up to you and they follow your example. I wouldn't be here today without the example of both my parents, who were extremely pro-life and supportive. So teach the young ones in your life the truth about abortion. Invite them to join you at pro-life events like this here today. Bring them to the March for Life in DC. Volunteer with them at a pregnancy resource center. Do something to show them that engagement in the pro-life movement is important. We could also use your prayers. I'm sure you know that spiritual warfare is real and rampant in the pro-life movement. So prayers and well wishes are always welcome. I remembered, that was the end of my speech, but I remembered being here last year in February, and I was waiting for the bill hearing for the infanticide bill here in Vermont. And I was waiting downstairs, and I was looking at all of the quotes along the walls in marble, and I saw one that intrigued me. It said, "Born of a resistance to arbitrary power, her first voice a declaration of equal rights of man. How could her people be other than haters of slavery? How can they do less than sympathize with every human being and every community which asserts the rights of all men to blessings like their own?" And that is from the Vermont Senate report in 1855. I think it's 1855. So that quote is on the walls here in your state house. And that is why what we're doing today is so important, because we need to bring that Vermont back. And so thank you all for coming out today.
Can you comment on how many student Vermont groups there are here?
Yeah, so there are 50 Students for Life groups in New England. Right now, there is one in Vermont. So this is my third year in this position here. The first year was trying to figure out what was going on in New England. Last year was really building it up again. And this year, I'm really strongly targeting both Vermont and Maine, because we have about 1 or 2 groups in each of those states. And yeah, Vermont is definitely a feat. So that's why I'm here. If you know young people who are involved, especially with the elections and the bills coming up, we need a lot more hours of the young people.
So, follow-up, where is the one here, and are any of you representatives of that group?
Yeah, so there is Knights for Life at Rice Memorial. What are you from there? Are you? Is it still there? Okay, yeah. So she is part of Rice Memorial. So that's the one. Yes.
Can we get one of those fancy sweatshirts you got?
Maybe not this exact one, but we do have an online shop with lots. That's another idea for gifts for your kids, for your grandkids. Get them pro-life clothes. This one is kind of boring, but we have lots of really cool ones. Our most popular says adoption saves lives, and it's the softest material you will ever feel. So check out our shop on the website and feel free to. I can probably give you some discount codes too. Does anyone else have questions? Yes.
I have a comment.
Okay.
I watch YouTube videos quite a bit, and one of the videos that I saw from Students for Life in 2017, it was a rooftop view of the entire March for Life 2017, condensed into 1 minute and 26 seconds. And and there was another one the following year in 2018, but the one in 2017 had background music as well. And from the vantage point of that rooftop, I just want to comment and just let you know how appreciative I am of that, because if anybody hasn't seen it, all right, they really got to see it. I don't think a lot of times that people here in Vermont realize how many people go down to the march. And I think it would be a big eye-opener, especially for those people. Because most of the people in the march now are getting younger, younger. And I think that is a compliment to Students for Life as well, that make the colleges that are teaching them.
Yeah, thank you. So you can expect to see another, it's called the Students for Life time lapse. We have special connections with the White House, and we get permission. So we get special access to a rooftop that shall remain nameless to get this time lapse video. And every year, I forget the last year when we started, but yes, there will be one. And we want it to prove that there are more than just a handful of people who go to the March for Life every year. Because that's what the media says, and that's wrong. So yes, our time lapses are on YouTube. They're also on our Students for Life website, and you can expect to see one. I think we get it out like the day of or the day after the March for Life. Anything else?
So encouraging to hear from young folks who are getting involved and getting other students involved and educated on the right to life. Next, we're privileged to have, we're really going local this year with our keynote speaker, and I love local things. I think this is just great. So she needs no introduction, but I think you'll agree that she deserves one, definitely. The executive director of Vermont Right to Life since 1996. I mean, that takes a darn tough Vermonter to be. In my profession, I serve on a lot of boards across the state, and I like to keep our boards, like when we're doing a conference or something, focused on our mission. So in introducing Mary, I'd like to just refresh us. What is our mission? What is the mission of Vermont Right to Life? It is to achieve the universal recognition of the sanctity of human life from conception through natural death. In pursuit of that mission, Vermont Right to Life Committee, through legal means, peaceful legal means, seeks changes in public opinion, public policy, the law, and individual behavior that respects the right to life and rejects abortion, euthanasia, and other actions that deny the right to life. So amen to that mission. Mary continues to be a strong, smart, and seemingly tireless, she must get tired, but she seems tireless, advocate for life in Vermont that really, it's like if you're out at sea off Gloucester or somewhere, it's like a lighthouse in the fog being in Vermont here. So join me in, let's get on our feet to welcome our keynote speaker, Mary Gerber.
More than we've ever needed them in all of our 40 years, some odd years of being in existence. I appreciate all of you. I'm going to put some people on their feet just so you know what the team of Vermont Right to Life looks like. So the people who come in this building and stand for life with me, and they did an amazing job last year. You would be proud. So I'm not alone, and I want to put some folks up, and I'm going to ask them to get up and stand up and stay standing up. So please hold your applause just till the end. First, I want to welcome our new co-worker. Maggie Karen is our Director of Advocacy and Outreach, and she walked in this building and picked it up like God had a plan for her life. So would you stand, please, Maggie, and hold your applause. And then I'm going to put on her feet our Vermont Right to Life Treasurer and Public Policy Analyst, and she testified in the State House numerous times over this past year. Please, on your feet, Sharon Tobort, and hold your applause. And then our new Southern Vermont Director, who is going to take on the job of developing some pro-life avenues for us in the southern part of the state, Anissa Lamberton of Middletown Springs. I'd also like to put on their feet, if there are some legislators in the room, I know we have Representative Ann Donahue from Northfield, if she would stay standing. And she is our champion, our pro-life. And when she gets on her feet, there's a shudder through the rest of the house. Anybody else that's a sitting legislator in the, oh, Vicky's here, pro-life champion Vicky. These two ladies put amendment after amendment on the floor of the House. Vicky Strong of Albany. And when she's praying for you, that's a really big, earth-shaking event. I also want to put on their feet anyone who is a member of the Board of Directors of the Vermont Right to Life Committee. Could you all rise from wherever you are? Okay, everybody up. I would also like to ask anyone who turned out for the 2 public hearings to get on your feet, whether you got to testify or just stand and witness. And then please rise, please rise. And then anyone who's ever come to a pro-life event like today. Just all get on your feet and keep yourselves a bit. Very certain that we caused a wave in the State House when the public hearings turned pro-lifers out against pro-choicers about 7-1, and the building was full to the all the way So I think most of you know what we ran into last year. 2019 will be a year for the history books, and I want to talk to you about how we got here. Just recently had a woman say to me from Michigan, but I thought Vermonters loved children, and I thought it was the Von Trapp family singers. What happened to Vermont? So we're going to take a look at how we got here. How did Vermont become the most pro-abortion state in the United States of America with a callous and heartless disregard for human life? So fasten your seatbelts, because we're going to do a little history work here, because Vermont wasn't always a pretty place. There's a dark chapter in our history about 100 years ago, and I'm going to sort of set that up for you so that we have a sense of how we got here. I mean, we're in a battle for life, but if you don't know your enemy's positioning, you don't know where they're at, you don't know how they think, and you don't know what they have for resources, then you really aren't going into battle prepared. This picture can be found on Planned Parenthood's Facebook page. And it's an accurate picture. They branded PP for Planned Parenthood on our State House because in 2019 they owned this place. They overwhelmed the House and the Senate with pro-abortion majorities, and who immediately decided to make abortion the centerpiece of the 2019 session. And then when our governor gave them extra funding, bringing this small state of Vermont's share of our taxpayer dollars to $1.4 million annually, that became even more correct because now they've branded the cash cow this state house. So we're going to take a look back. They've taken over, Planned Parenthood had affluence and influence in every area of government and in our hospitals. But before I take you to present day, I'm going to take you back 100 years to a very little known chapter a dark chapter in the history of Vermont called the Eugenics Project. Anybody heard of the Eugenics Project? Good, you're paying attention. All right, we're going to explore it just a little more and quickly. So it involved the legislature and it involved people in high places and medical professionals. Henry Perkins was a professor of zoology at UVM. He was a student of Darwinism, and he was the Vermont and national eugenics pioneer. So he not only launched the eugenics project here in Vermont, he also worked nationally to promote eugenics. And this was a very short time in Vermont history, from 1925 to 1931. So the definition of eugenics, there's the dictionary definition, blah, 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 blah. But anyway, the real definition is the powerful over the powerless. And you've seen it rise its ugly head in many chapters in United States history, plantation owners lording it over their black slaves. You've seen it in Nazi Germany, and the forced sterilization of the poor, which is what the Eugenics Project essentially was, and still carries on today. So today, a word more properly probably used than eugenics would be population control, ethnic cleansing, family planning, taking action to eliminate certain persons. So Henry Perkins had a passion for this. He believed that you were poor because your genes were defective. He wanted to restore Yankee stock to Vermont. What's Yankee stock? Not Abenaki Indians, I guess, and not the French-Canadian migrants who came to Vermont in those years. He's been known as a white, wealthy, racist eugenicist. He took it upon himself to cleanse the Vermont gene pool. Came to the State House to get some help, and they turned him down. But we're going to go back on that in a little while. So when he couldn't get a legal path forward, he went ahead and created the Vermont Commission on Country Life. Now these folks were like social workers who would go into towns, but they already knew the families they were targeting. And they would gather gossip and information on neighbors. They wanted to get in and round up and institutionalize as many of the targeted families as they could. And then when they could find something against one of the families they had already targeted, they would be looking at jail time, reform school, homes for unfit mothers, and so on. Here's an example, and it's an ideology that affected the culture, just like this ideology, pro-choice ideology, is affecting the culture now. And of course, once they were in these institutions and in the state institutions, their condition of release was voluntary sterilization. Right. So here's a newspaper headline. This is how it permeated the culture. This was a headline in the newspaper, like this is an ordinary thing to say. Heredity is a big problem. Home for the feeble-minded, that's some of the terminology they use, defectives, feeble-minded, imbeciles. This is all to create a second class of citizens. Home for feeble-minded is filled with those whose parents were not as carefully selected as dairymen breed cattle. That was quite a view of human beings. Now, don't take my word for it. UVM was extremely involved in the eugenics project. The UVM president at the time, Guy Bailey, was up to his neck in all of this, and recently they've taken his name off the building, the library, taken his name down, and formally apologized for the eugenics project, and created a website so that you can go and find out more. What happened is the author of Breeding Better Vermonters, the book I showed you in the beginning, it's not an easy read, but Nancy Gallagher and her friend Kevin Dan stumbled across some boxes that were stuffed in the corner of the attic of the UVM library. And they pulled all of this apart and began to write it down for history. So you can go to UVM website to find out more. Some states have publicly apologized for their eugenics projects, but not Vermont. So here's an example of some of the pseudoscience they used. Oh, that was the newspaper article. Not that. This is the kind of maps they would draw up to make it look like they had scientific stuff going on when they just knew the families they wanted to target anyway. And this is the kind of pseudoscience graphs and charts. They make no sense. Don't even try to absorb that. Even after Henry Perkins realized that he was wrong, that it's not just defective genes, the one thing these folks had in common that were targeted, they might have been Abnaki Indians, they might have been French Canadian, they might have been the Italian marble workers, but they were all poor. That's the real thing they had in common. So I'm going to tell you two stories. One story about, so it becomes real for you. One story is about Helena, and that's straight from Reading Better Vermonter's book. In 1928, Helena was a 17-year-old girl who assumed the care of her 6 siblings because of her mother's poor health. The truant and health officer of the town had requested the Department of Public Welfare investigate a neighbor's complaint that the younger children had been stealing from her, and the teacher reported truancy, behavior difficulties, and child battering. After the 10 and 13-year-olds were sent to reform school, this is a 17-year-old who's lost 2 of her siblings because of the government. Helena acted out, and the neighbor who got the kids taken out of the home, she did go over and she did steal from her. Well, she sealed her own fate. After the outburst, Helena and all the remaining children were sent to the Vermont Industrial School or the Brandon Reform School. 3 of the 4 oldest children, including Helena, were sterilized prior to discharge. Helena later married, and she and her husband became respected members of the community, running a productive farm. Acquaintances often remarked, it was a pity they never had a family. So now the next story I got myself directly from a descendant of the Abnakis, and I love this story. Rob and the best 5 years of my life. So the man I talked to, the descendant, as I said, the Abnakis were particularly targeted. Another descendant of the Abnakis told me he clearly remembered the grandparents saying, if the black cars come to town, run for the hills, kids, because they were from the government. You know the government, we're here to help. So that's a different story. This one is an Abnaki descent, and as a young child, he attended this extensive family reunion every year. And Uncle Rob would make a point of kissing each of his grandchildren on the top of the head and saying, best 5 years of my life, best 5 years of my life. So finally, this young kid asked one of the elderly aunts, why does Uncle Rob do that? Why does he kiss the kids on the top of the head? She said, well, your Uncle Rob, when he was a younger man, was a rough and ready Northeast Kingdom boy, prone to trouble and bar fights and brawls. Well, one of those brawls wound up involving a knife. And now Uncle Rob is facing a judge, and he's facing prison time. And the judge says, I'll knock that 5 years off, and you can be free to go if you voluntarily agree to be sterilized. So Rob, in a modern day probably rendition, said, no and hell no. And so he served the 5 years, and that's why he kissed the kids on the top of the head and said, that's 5 years of my life. So now we're going to move on to why that dark chapter in Vermont's history is pertinent to today. Today when institutions have been taken over. This is Margaret Sanger. She was one of the most ardent supporters of eugenics in the 1920s, and she's the founder of Planned Parenthood. Now, she used the same terms that Henry Perkins used. You can see here, taken from her book, The Pivot of Civilization. She called for the elimination of human weeds, for the segregation of morons, misfits, and the maladjusted. And keep in mind, and the sterilization of genetically inferior races. She also used the word defectives, remember that for later. There's a chapter in her book called The Cruelty of Charity. One statement that is attributed to Margaret Sanger is that the most merciful thing you can do for an infant in a large family is kill it. Now, Planned Parenthood says she was just being sarcastic, but you read The Cruelty of Charity and you'll see that that statement probably rings true. Now, she and Henry Perkins knew each other and knew each other well. They exchanged letters, and when all of this, so this is not just unique to Vermont. There were eugenics projects, and there was some eugenics that was the start of the Germany program that eventually led to the Nazis. I'm not saying that Margaret Sanger or Henry Perkins were involved in Nazi Germany, but there was a thread of thinking that developed. So nationwide, the eugenics project started to fold up shop. It became extremely unpopular to even use the word. So remember, Henry Perkins is still at the national organization, and but they passionately still believe that we have to forcibly sterilize and eliminate human weeds. So what they do is they bring Henry Perkins from Vermont, brings Margaret Sanger to the national group to convince them that she's the wave of the future. That her positive eugenics ideas would replace the negative eugenics ideas. Now, she was not someone who was allowed in polite company, so we had some work to do. Margaret Sanger led a scandalous personal life. She wasn't invited into some of the upper circles. But he did his job. He managed it. So the eugenics projects all fold up and go home, and boxes get taken to the UVM attic and sealed up, so no one really remembers what happened, because it was pretty much, a dismal chapter. And the next thing we know, Margaret Sanger's organization was the Birth Control Review, but as you probably all know, that immediately, shortly thereafter, became Planned Parenthood is launched now in America and across the world. So they're, and their international Planned Parenthood federation is involved in population control, where? In the poor countries. So this thread continues, and Vermont has a huge piece of that piece of the history, and they've never apologized. Planned Parenthood has never apologized for any of Margaret Sanger's statements, and they've never apologized for the eugenics project. So we're going to move now. We're starting to move into getting closer to 2019. You're going to see some of the same language, a little more polished up, though. This is according to Steve Scalise, the Louisiana Republican. Bernie Sanders said, your tax dollars should be used to fund abortions in foreign countries to reduce population size. So here we go again. And it's making its way back into public opinion, and it's becoming prevalent among the climate change supporters. Another probably familiar face is U.S. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She's also permeating the culture with the thinking that young people should consider not having children. And what are they going to do to not have children? Be sterilized. So here we go again. But this is the positive eugenics that Henry Perkins could see would work better than the negative eugenics of rounding people up and basically forcing them. Convincing the culture to sterilize themselves is the goal. So Planned Parenthood now becomes a stronghold in Vermont. It's because of some of this early thinking. They bought up all the other abortion clinics, and there used to be 2 big clinics, and now it's all just Planned Parenthood. They are the single largest providers of abortion in the United States of Vermont, the United States of America, and in the world. Now I want you to take a careful look at this. It's Planned Parenthood of Northern New England, so it's a tri-state Planned Parenthood. But for some reason, the 2 states that have twice our population have only a handful of clinics. Where in the state of Vermont, we have 12 Planned Parenthood clinics in a state of 620,000. So their influence is statewide, and it's massive, and it's deep. And then they have a political action fund that is very active at election time. Here's what you're going to be seeing. They're getting into our schools more and more. This is a, go back one. Yeah, if you want want to forewarn parents because they have the grant money to be in 6 middle schools, and there's a bill coming up that could open the door to way broader access to children, maybe even as much as young as the 7th grade. And this is a poster I found because this is today's culture under the influence. I have had children tell me that unborn babies are just parasites. So let's run up to 2019. And I'm going to be naming some names, I'm going to be putting some pictures up there, but I know you and you know me, and that is so that you can focus your prayers for these people, okay? I went to the Northeast Kingdom, and the pastors group asked me for a talk, and they said, focus our prayers, Mary, tell us what we don't know. So this is where we're at. The vitriol, the hatred for Donald Trump and for the fact that Brett Kavanaugh was seated on the Supreme Court just permeated this building last year. As I told many of you before, they kicked off a rally with the words, "Who loves abortion?" and the entire room went, "We do, we do." That is what we were facing last year. It was biblical in proportion. It was an unstoppable wave of lust for abortion. So Act 57, H 57 is now Act 47. Be very clear, in Vermont statute, there is now 100% protection for the business of abortion. Unlike any small business you run or work in, or anyone you work for, there is now no regulation, no interference from the government, and it's possible there's a restriction on speech. We'll be testing the wire on that in the courts. But this is breathtaking in its depth. So Planned Parenthood, who testified they do 90% of the abortions in the state of Vermont, co-opted this building and granted themselves broad immunity to do anything they want inside the walls of those clinics, despite the best efforts of Ann Donahue and Vicki Strong. They rejected the federal funds because their heart's desire is to call abortion just another method of family planning. And the Title X money they wanted from the government, we replaced, but now they don't have any restriction. Under Title X, you couldn't use it as a method of family planning, now you can. They also, that wasn't enough, they also went for the attempt to put abortion into our Constitution. And this is the language of Proposal 5, or Article 22, that an individual's right to personal reproductive autonomy is central to the liberty and dignity to determine one's own life course and shall not be denied or infringed unless justified by a compelling state interest achieved by the least restrictive means. That is more gobbledygook that will come to mean things we cannot imagine now. It will be more than just abortion. Interestingly enough, Vermont Right to Life said if you want to amend the Constitution and you should put the word abortion in the language. The ACLU agreed with us, the Attorney General's office agreed with that, and so did their own legal legislative council, and they refused. So be ready. Everything passed by wide margins. It wasn't stoppable despite the fights on the floor. Planned Parenthood later praised Governor Phil Scott, the Vermont legislature, the Attorney General T.J. Donovan, and the Vermont Department of Health. And there were so many more. The Human Rights Commission, this always struck me, the Human Rights Commission came in to say that abortion is a human right. So the organization defending human beings says it's okay to kill a human being. And then the Governor's Commission on Women came in to tell everybody that women are economically better off if they only have 2 children, and we have to have abortion so they can limit their families, and of course, you're better off if you even only have 1, and best of all, if you have none. This is shades of eugenics. Planned Parenthood has hit the ground running, and we're going to be doing the same, but they gave out their awards, and I think it's important to know that one of the awards given out was to our Attorney General, who promised and pledged to use his office to help promote passage of Proposal 5. These are taxpayer-funded organizations, my friends, and they're going to be working against us. We're going to need every one of you. Here's some faces. Remember, it's to pray for them. Their hearts are as hard as they can be, and they need prayer. This is it. So Planned Parenthood has these sex, politics, and cocktails evenings. I mean, it's so juvenile. But they had one honoring the leader of both of these proposals in the Senate, that's Senator Ginny Lyons from Burlington, Chittenden County, along with TJ. This is taken, okay, sorry, I'm a little bit behind on this. And so these two ladies, probably their pictures don't show very well, but it comes from a New York Times article that was done on what was happening here in Vermont. And they are the chairs of House Judiciary and House Human Services. They both passionately supported Proposal 5, Act H57, and years ago, both the proposals to legalize assisted suicide in Vermont. Just so you know how wacky things are getting, to your left, Representative Maxine Jograd is now taking up a bill to decriminalize prostitution, and Representative Ann Pugh is taking up H663, which I mentioned before, which would put over-the-counter contraceptives in the schools as young as 7th grade. So some more of what is going on in the State House. These are insiders trading places. So on your left is Jill Krowinski. She used to work for Planned Parenthood. She was their direct vice president of public policy. She signed the paperwork. Do you guys remember the fight between Governor Shumlin and Governor Brian Dubie? Oh, if we only had Brian Dubie as governor of the state. Well, she signed the paperwork authorizing the expenditures of monies in that race to benefit Peter Shumlin. And it was in violation of the campaign finance laws. Well, you can only pick up on that afterward. Now, that was a razor-close race. We filed a complaint with the state of Vermont. They concurred, and they fined Planned Parenthood $30,000. Well, when $30,000 to get the governor that's going to line your pockets, that's a pretty good deal. So as a reward, when there was an open seat in Burlington, Peter Shumlin appointed her to a legislative seat, and she rose to be my majority leader of the Democrats in very quick order. Now, Lucy LaRiche was the Democrat majority leader in the House, and she took Jill Krowinski's job as Vice President of Public Policy and lobbied here in the State House. That is the kind of insider trading knowledge. That's the kind of political clout, the how to get jobs done, the I know the right person to go to that moves the bill quickly through the House. So prayers for both of them. Now we're going to go to institutions, because our institutions are suffering, as you know. The Vermont Medical Center made the decision for the first time in over 45 years to get involved in elective abortions. As one commentator said, they've transformed the surgical unit into an abortion clinic, repurposed it as an abortion clinic, and we're very dismayed, very dismayed. The CEO of the UVM Medical Center Hospital is John Brumstead. He's the $2.2 million guy, but he got his start at the Vermont Women's Health Center, the once upon a time the state's largest abortion center. He's now the chief, CEO of the whole shebang. His wife is a sitting legislator, and together they have a daughter who works at Planned Parenthood. Sitting as chair of the UVM Medical Center Board of Trustees is Allie Stickney. I remember her from the 80s. She's a formidable gal. She got her start as the CEO of Planned Parenthood of Northern New England for years. Then she went out to Portland, Oregon to run their enterprise for Planned Parenthood. She came back to the Manhattan office. That's a famous office because that's where they begin their work as international population controllers. She retired back to Vermont but became CEO of Wake Robin. Well, interestingly enough, all the push for assisted suicide came from Wake Robin. And while she presided as their CEO, she had speaker after speaker and sent busloads of the residents down here to fight for assisted suicide. Now, the fellow sitting next to her is Jack Beecham. Dr. Jack Beecham was the man who took the abortion case to the Vermont Supreme Court. Remember, abortion was illegal in Vermont. He took a case to the Supreme Court challenging that, and he won. And Vermont actually legalized abortion in 1972. So why do I have them on the same screen? Well, the two of them met at a 25th anniversary celebration of Roe v. Wade, and they fell madly in love and are married. These are powerful people, folks, and they unite and they mean business. They get on the boards. They take it over. They don't just fool around. They aren't playing nice like we often do. Two more powerful folks. I am hitting this too hard, I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry, my slides were not in order. So the two that got married were Allie Stickney and Jack Beecham. This is another married couple. Stephen Sinding is the former Director General of the London-based International Planned Parenthood Federation. The Wall Street Journal, he did a 7-year stint there. He was in the Manhattan office for a while, and perhaps Allie and he know each other. He expressed very clearly his desire to bring back the spirit of Margaret Sanger. When he and his wife retired, they retired back here to Manchester, Vermont. He is the treasurer for Planned Parenthood of Northern New England, and Monica Knorr is the president of Death with Dignity, one of the organizations fighting for assisted suicide. I'm going to tell you a little bit. So now that the UVM Medical Center has trained late-term abortionists, one in particular came down to the House multiple times to testify in favor of both age 57 and and the Proposal 5. She described, they asked her about late-term abortion, and so she described how she performs a dilation and evacuation using the following terms. She compared abortion to a miscarriage. Same procedure, she said. It took a more thoughtful fellow on the committee to say, but is it the heart beating still in one of those procedures? She talked about feticidal injections. Feticidal injections, not digoxin to stop the heart. Use the word feticidal injection. She talked about transecting the umbilical cord. It's just as coolly and calmly as if she was talking about exterminating S. When you transect the umbilical cord, that baby smothers, and it doesn't happen right away. She talked about how the fetus would die on the inside, and when discussing partial birth abortion, she used the word exterminate. Another one who came down was Dr. Ira Bernstein. He testified in the Senate Health and Welfare Committee, and he pledged undying support for both proposals from the Medical Center and the Vermont Medical Society. Let's think about that. He is a doctor of maternal fetal medicine, and he went on to describe the hospital's ethical policy on elective abortion. Well, it turns out there will be no ethical consult, nothing involved up to 23 weeks at the UVM Medical Center. You want an abortion, you can have one. At about 23 weeks, they might call in an ethics consult. It might be the whole team, it might be just one or two. When Dr. Bernstein was testifying, somebody said, well, why are they doing abortions so late anyway? And he used his thumbnail to describe that little heart is only about the size of his thumbnail at 20 weeks. So they have to let that heart get a little bigger so they can see the defects. Remember I told you to hang on to that word defectives, so they can see the defect. This is him outside after he's done testifying, being pretty much fawned over by Planned Parenthood's lobbyist, Lucy Reich, and the lobbyist for the Vermont Medical Society. It was a really dismaying time for all of us to watch. So I'm just going to take a minute. Let's take just a second to listen to the heart they're talking about. Let's see if I can get this going. Oh. I know. Yeah, I'm doing really well with all this technology. So that's the heart they're talking about, needs to get a little bigger before you can see the defect. This is going to be written up as a dark chapter in Vermont's history. Now, they're hitting the ground running. Planned Parenthood, as they promised Tim Ash, who is the Senate Pro Tem, they promised him that they would hit the ground running and go all over the state promoting the passage of Proposal 5, and they're doing it. So look for them to come to a school, a college, and a community near you. And look who they're leagued up with. Patient Choices is the really successful pro-suicide group. They're still promoting ending your life as just another choice to ending your life with a lethal dose. They have been to colleges and campuses all over the state. Isn't that an interesting mix of people? Why is Death with Dignity, Patient Choices leading up with Planned Parenthood and the Democrats to promote passage of Proposal 5? They're coming to an area near you. They're also promoting assisted suicide now at UVM's Medical Center. There will be a panel discussion on Tuesday, January 28th. We'll be looking for medical professionals to come, and please, please don't let this happen. Up until now, they have not offered assisted suicide to their dying terminally ill patients, but I think that's about to change. And as I told you, Chair of the Board and other like-minded folks will be driving that train. We'll be attending, and we'll do what we can to mitigate the damage. There are forces out there on assisted suicide who are videotaping family members and loved ones and promoting the positive eugenics of ending your own life. And this will permeate the culture. There are grandparents who are taking their life, having a glass of champagne surrounded by their family and friends. What is that message for our young people? So, we're gonna reset things and get into a little happier news. But one thing I want you to know is that they're not going to be tripping over books in the attic and finding boxes about 2019. Because thanks to Maggie Karen, who you met earlier, we've got it all transcribed and it's going to be ready for the book. They won't be able to accuse us of making up a single word because we've got it all transcribed. So if you need any resources, let us know, but that's how full our one bookshelf is right now. We've also got a new website. I invite you to check it out. It's just newly up, and it's going to be user-friendly, easy to find, and on there you'll be able to register for our upcoming Life Symposium Conference. You're all invited to come, September 19th, 2020. We're going to put this all together. We're going to get you educated about what Proposal 5 means, and we're going to send you home armed and ready to make a difference in your community. Medical professionals are going to be able to earn continuing education credits. We haven't got that set up just yet, but we will. This will be held at the old Sheraton in Burlington. It's now the DoubleTree by Hilton. We have limited seating, and there's going to be special tracks for Students for Life. So please, on your way out, there's a table and you can grab your registration form. I know it seems like a long way away, but it isn't, and it's going to fill up fast. Now, I'm going to end with the only news that really matters. Because they can take over institutions, they can take over this legislature, they can take over our medical center. But guess what? They're losing because the number of abortions has dropped so dramatically despite all their best efforts, from a high of 3,500 in the 80s to down to 1,200 a year in Vermont. That's the news that God's looking at. That's your news. That's your success story. And I invite you to stick together with all of our friends in the pregnancy care resource centers. By the way, a brand new one is opening up next week in Lindenville, New Futures Pregnancy Center. And together with your efforts, So partnering with all of you and our pro-life legislators and our pro-life medical professionals, and New Futures is the name of it is New Futures Pregnancy Center in Lindenville. I urge and encourage you to stay the course, because together we will bring Vermont back to life.
Wow. So you're not going to hear that message on VPR, by the way, so I'm glad you to hear that. It's Mary will be here afterwards for the duration. She is also our local resource for Right to Life all the time at Vermont Right to Life. So if you have any questions today, tomorrow, or next week, she'll be here for you. So thank you, Mary. It's a sobering message, but it's also an educational one. And it's important to have that reality check. What is the reality that we're dealing with, and what's the real information, so that we can take it to prayer and take it to action with each other. Moving right along, it's almost time for refreshments and social, which is in the cafeteria. I would like to ask that as you're in line, if there's seniors and families with children, if you'd let them mosey along, just encourage them to go straight to the front of the line, because we do believe in charity as a pro-life people. And the lunch is free, but we welcome donations to offset the cost. We'd like to thank Simply Subs and Washington County Right to Life for hosting the luncheon as well. A couple of takeaway points. Mary gave us several, but just recapping on them. So what can we do as a pro-life people in Vermont with all that Abigail shared with us and all that Mary shared with us? One thing is, if you can't get to the March for Life next Friday, you can watch it live stream. You can also, at Students for Life, see the link for their kind of their 1 minute recap on the crowds, but the remarks and the talks at that March for Life are so inspirational, and just to see hundreds of thousands of young people from across our country gathered. So try to tune into that during the day or after the fact if you're at work next Friday. You can also text the word March. You can text March to 73075. 73-075, I can give that to you later if you need. And if you text March to 73075, you'll get local Right to Life March updates. So you could try it out, and if it doesn't work, you can delete it. But that's the newest thing from the March for Life in Washington. So also, please stop at the 40 Days for Life. We're so glad that 40 Days for Life is growing in Vermont, and Lisa, and maybe Lisa is over here by the doorway. She has a table. Please stop by. We're glad that you're here at 40 Days for Life. There's so many organizations doing good work for life. Also, right out here in the card table, you can sign the Proposal 5 petition and the Students for Life as well, right? So please sign up at the table right outside this door. And a little shout out to the Light Radio. You've been so supportive. Is anyone here from Light Radio today? Okay, I don't see anyone at the moment, but Light Radio has been so supportive in getting the word out for the Rally for Life. So, so please tune in to the Light Radio as well. Also, is Donna McSully here from Our Lady of Perpetual Help? Here's Donna. Could you please rise? Radio in the state as well to help us bring Vermont back to life. I'll show you a little sneak peek at the new design. You can get your bumper sticker out here. Oh, it's right out. So your bumper sticker that is indicated on the signs is our new design, thanks to David Wilson, a graphic designer from Addison County, who helped come up with that. and this will be applicable all during the time we're working on defeating Proposal 5. I wanted to say a special thank you, shout out to Pastor Austin and Matthew and his son from the Capital Community Church. They helped us with AV system, helping everything up and running, and it's a huge gift to us. So thank you. And as we close, we can head to lunch immediately after this, I'd like to end with the song that I promised you, written by, I believe, Dorothy Bolduc from Franklin County, Right to Life. And so they're going to lead us in the song, Bring Vermont Back to Life. Donna, thank you. Carry on the torch of the life movement. And it was just noted to me that we have some students here, and I'd like you to rise when I mention your university. We have some students here from UVM, and a couple cadets from Norwich, and also from